Good evening, everyone. I wasn't sure if I was going live there. I was like clicking on different things. If you have joined me tonight, happy Sunday to you. I know it's not nighttime where everybody is, but it'll be mainly, I think, UK and people nearby. So normally at 7:30 on a Sunday night, my Impact members and I have something called Sunday Night Live, and it is the way to come on before that kind of Monday morning thing starts happening and thing. We have a chat about the weekend, and if anybody wants to ask me anything or share anything, we literally get together with a cuppa and we have a chat, and it's lovely. But today, as you may have seen on this group, the message that I give out all the time about being a user of a scheme and not a follower has really come up. And I thought it would be much more helpful for me to come on live here and invite all my Impact members over as well and have a chat about it and look at some examples together of what I mean by this. Okay, now there's lots and lots of things. I'm not going to do this, but I could literally keep you on for hours with all of the things that I know would be really helpful to you, but I'm going to keep it really short and hopefully say some things that will reassure you, help you, and get you on a new track. And I know my Impact members and greater Impact members will also join in and say things in the chat box, and then you can obviously come on this group and ask them any questions you want and me at any time. So hello there. Sally's got wine instead of a cuppa. Hi Liz, hi everyone, hi Zofia. We've got lots and lots of my Impact members, and if they have given ECAM, which is what I'm broadcasting on their permission, their name pops up like this. There's Jane, and if you haven't, I will see this, but do come on and say hello. I'm really warm. If you are in the UK, you'll know it's been, of course, super hot. I don't need to tell you that because you've been in your classrooms and settings. So I'm going to put the fan on and look like a bit of a, advert for hair. Okay, so I want to talk about, as I say, the difference between being a user and a follower. Now, right from the start, let's get this clear, this message from me. I know that in most cases, you cannot choose whether you have a scheme in place or not. So you may be much less common in nursery, but reception age, year 1, year 2, or if you're not in England, you might be in Scotland or Northern Ireland, Wales, call something else, but it is your 4 to 5 year olds, 5 to 6, 6 to 7 and beyond. But I tend to work with this 3 to 7 age group. And I have been increasingly asked by teachers teaching 5 to 7 for support because they are receiving children who've been with practitioners who've worked with me in nursery and reception, and the number sense of the children is so amazing that when they then come to deliver their schemes in year 1 and year 2, they're finding that the children are so secure they don't need what's in the schemes, they need something more because they're so good. I mean, that's great news, isn't it? So there's that part of it, but also there's the idea that if you are a follower, you literally will do what the scheme says. So whatever is in the activity, you will feel like you need the PowerPoints and so forth. So say with White Rose, for example, that comes up the most, rather than just have an overview of ideas, which we all need, nothing wrong with that at all, you might think, well, I need the PowerPoint and I need the video of the lady talking and I need all the workbooks. Now, if you're feeling like that, the main reason you're going to feel like that is because you don't have anything else to turn to, and your own knowledge and confidence is in a place where you couldn't do it otherwise. So the obvious thing there, so I'm going to move my fan out of the way because it's a bit quite noisy, is to make sure you invest in your own knowledge. That hopefully is really obvious, and that's what people like me are here to do. So you understand the maths, you gain your confidence, and you'll do much better. But the other side of it, being a user, is very different. A user has the scheme in place and looks at the activity that the scheme is saying to do and thinks, do you know what? I know what skills that this activity is aiming to give my children, and I understand the maths behind this, and I understand how my children learn and where my children are at in terms of what engages them. So this is what I specialize in, helping people to notice and use what children are interested in so they're easy to teach, and also making sure you understand the maths that your children are dealing with and how that maths goes on to be used in year 1 and year 2 and beyond. You would look at an activity if you're a user and think, Do I like that activity as it is, or can I see a way of breathing more life into it, or tweaking it, or saying, actually, I'm not going to do it like that at all. I'm going to work to the learning objective, but I'm going to do it differently. Does that make sense? As I say, sorry about the hair advert flopping all over the place. It's really warm in here. So that's the difference, right? There's an awful lot of emotion at the moment on this group, completely understandable, because you are, in many cases, being squeezed so much and it's just horrible. My job is to stop you feeling like that. My job, I created my job. No one's forcing me to do this. And all of the impact and greater impact members will tell you that since working together, they are happier, more confident, their well-being is so much better. And the reason they're like that is because they see what they're doing in the classroom with their children or their setting making such a difference. Their children are so switched on. Their maths is not separate. Their maths flows through everything. So whether you are an individual impact member, I've also got Pathway, which is my sort of earlier stage membership. And then we've got Team Impact, where people work with me as large groups and whole schools. All of those people are seeking to be users and not followers. And in many cases, they move away from using the scheme altogether. But that doesn't mean they can't go and look for ideas and look for exciting ways of doing things with their children. We all need that. So I hope all that makes sense, okay? Because this is not training as such. This is just kind of a conversation to get people thinking in a different way and stop being scared. Okay. I will mention at this point that there was a few messages on the group saying, oh, Karen, it isn't that easy. One, I would say with respect, I have been a teacher for so long and been in education so long in all my different roles, mainly as a teacher, but as a senior leader and as a local authority consultant, as an independent consultant. You do not need to tell me that this isn't easy, because I've been on both sides for years and years and years. But because something isn't easy isn't a reason to not want to do it. Nothing that was ever worth achieving was easy. And this is going to end up with you having better mental health, better well-being, because you're doing right by your children. But I totally get, and my impact members will tell you this a million times over, we talk about being subversive. If you go to someone and say, this isn't working, Karen Wilding says we should be doing this, you're going to get someone who puts their hands over their ears and goes la la la. You're going to get someone who feels pushed into a corner and threatened. So again, those of you who've been saying, we can't go to our senior leaders and tell them this is all wrong, I'm not suggesting that, because it doesn't work. What I'm suggesting is you become a user of the scheme and not a follower. And the way you do that is you let someone like me help you build your math subject knowledge and improve the way you teach your children. And you do it within your scheme that you're working with, so everybody's happy. And when your children start making the progress that they will make, and someone says, gosh, this is going really well, that's the time to say, well, can I just tell you about the things I'm doing differently? Can I tell you about the things that I know that I didn't learn from this scheme? And we need to bring, and that's the time to have a conversation. That's when people are open, or when you've already proved something works. This is what the thousands of people in Impact and Team Impact are saying and doing. Okay, so if this sounds like something you want to do, you're on the right call. If you say it's just not that simple, we can't do this, this is what, it's fine, you're not ready yet, that's fine, but I wouldn't stay on this call because it won't be the right time for you. All right, so I'm not even looking in the chat box. Okay, so loads of people saying hello and lots of people with cheeky glasses of wine. Okay, so I'm going to get straight on here and we'll do some playing first. Keep an eye on the chat box, because impact members particularly, it would be so good for you to share where you were, what you didn't know, because everyone comes in the same place. Everyone says the same thing, where they go like, oh my goodness, I would never have done it like this, and I can't believe the difference. And this time last year, I was thinking so differently, because how would I know what I didn't know, and so forth. So Jane said here, for example, that how the subject knowledge, the math subject knowledge, is so empowering. So Jane's been with me, I'm going to guess, Jane, about 3 years now, or 2.5 years, a long time in the time that EY Maths has been around. And it is what will build your confidence. But we're going to have a little play first. So get ready. I want you to do some typing, okay, in the box and play along here. So I'm going to show something and you just tell me what you saw, okay? So what do you see? Now, look. When I'm on eCam, I always go the wrong way. But what do you see? Now, you might say you might say a board, you might say purple counters with wiggles on them. You can say whatever you like. But then we'll move beyond that and say, looking at those counters, what do you notice? What do you see? And there isn't a wrong answer. There's just what you see. So I'll have some coffee while you're writing that in the chat box. Can you see it in a different way? So lots of people saw 4, and you think you're going to see 4 because you have seen this on a die on dominoes so much. It is a really, really helpful pattern. Your brain does not need to try hard to see 4. Yeah, it's really good. Now, if you only ever see a die or dice, yes, die being plural, that pattern, then it almost becomes the equivalent of, if you're not careful, just the symbol. Your brain looks at that image and says 4, and it would look at this image and say 4. But some of you, if not all of you, said you can see 2 and 2 as well. And is there only one way of seeing 2 and 2? Or can you, if you put your finger in the air, if you imagine, if you're not with anybody else, imagine you were, or you were talking to me, what can you see? How do you see it? So you might say, well, I saw 2 there and 2 there, but I saw 2 there and 2 there, and it could be those 2, and it could be those 2. It doesn't matter which 2. Did you see, for example, some of you might have seen a 3 and a 1. Doesn't matter which 3 and which 1, or you might have seen 1 and 1 and 1 and 1, and you're writing all of this in the chat box. All of what we've just done there, I want you to hold on to those skills. The fact that we looked at it in all different ways and we saw all those different parts within the whole, okay? Is that the same amount? Is that the same amount? And if it is, how do you know? Pop in the chat box. I'll try not to wriggle it around too much. Go that way. So join in, because this is really, really important. Okay, many of the people, I can see their names, they are already full-on users, not followers. They've stopped fighting any feeling that they have to do things a certain way or they're feeling bad. They've learned how to be users and everybody is happy. Okay, so is it the same amount? How do you know? So because we're doing it quite quickly today, I'm going to say my reasoning is that when it was like this, I saw there were 2 2s. And then when it was like this, there were still 2 2s, so it still must be 4. Look how different it looks. Can you see that I don't even need to know what that's called? Can you see there? That pattern has got parts in it. Maybe I know what 2s are as a child, because we do 1, 2, and 3 first. We always look at that at early years maths first, because that's what you're naturally born able to do, not use the number names. Of course, you learn to do that. But I could see a 2 and a 2, and then when they were like this, I could see a 2 and a 2. So it must be the same amount. Knowing it's 4 is an extra skill. We do something called move it to prove it, where if I move it there and put it back to being a 4, and then like this and say, look, it's the 4. There it is. Move it to prove it. And we love doing things like that. So I could then hide the board and do something like this and say, is it still the same amount? Now I could have both next to each other if you wanted to, or we could look there and we could say, move it to prove it. So if I put that one back there and that one back there, in that, we saw, for example, a 2 and a 1 and a 1. And I can't remember what I did, so I'll do it like this. But there's a 2 and a 1 and a 1. And it doesn't matter how we arrange them. That's called conservation of number. The amount is the same. There's still a 2 and a 1 and a 1. There's still a, for example, a 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a 1. And even when I move it to prove it, the 1 and the 1 and the 1 and the 1 are still there. Okay, so this is really, really important stuff. Okay, let's do another one. I have to do some very quick building here. You're doing this at your level, by the way, but all of you who've done even the tiniest bit of training with me through my free YouTube channel, anything like that, you will know about all of this, saying, what do you see and how do you see it? So what do you see? What do you notice? And then the how do you see it? Don't say that too soon, otherwise they'll say with my eyes. But when you model like I did there, well, I can see a 2 and a 1 and a 1. And we do this. We drop nuts and bolts from a height into plant pot trays, and we notice 1s, 2s, and 3s. We draw around them with paintbrushes and making marks are great for fine motor control and mark making. We do it with really big stuff outside, like plastic dishes or even tires. So the children get used to spotting 1s, 2s, and 3s. to begin with, within large amounts, in lots of different contexts. Okay, so I want you to ask yourself at that stage, in your scheme, does it say to do any of those things? It probably won't. So what you can do is see, well, when you get to the bit where you're doing subitizing and it says usually something on a PowerPoint, it might be, oh, go and get these bits of equipment. A user would say, do you know what? This is a brilliant opportunity for what Karen said about do it outside, do it inside, do it on the tough tray, draw around it with chalk. Give these children some real engagement, and they'll sit in their snack time and say things like, I've got 2 blueberries and you've got 1 blueberry, and here's 3 blueberries, look, move it to prove it. All that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's take it up a level. What do you see? Try that way. What do you see? And how do you see it? So I've taken it up a level here. There's a lot more to look at. Okay, remember this is about your maths here. So pop in the chat box. What do you see? And how do you see it? And it might be, if I was doing this as training, this, if you're looking at, for example, this amount here, when children are very young or learning to this to begin with, sometimes having them a little bit more spaced out makes it easier to see the individual groups. But of course, you can probably see things both vertically and horizontally. Sorry, it's a little bit wiggly. It'll bother some people more than others. Oh gosh, that really is wiggly. Hang on, that's bothering me. Okay, so, and I could, in fact, I might move it a little bit closer together. I don't know if cognitively this is easier to see. Let's see, like that. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The spacing's not quite there, is it? So here, and I'll have a look in the chat box in a moment, but here there's so much to see. There are parts within the whole, look, there's the 4 we saw before, and there it is, and there it is, and there it is. I wonder if you've spotted that. If you are really good at subitizing, you won't just look at the whole, you'll look at parts within the whole. So most adults will spot the 3 3s that way and that way. And they'll also spot the fact that if I had spaced this correctly, it's got a square shape. If we were to draw a line around here, this 3 times 3 is what we call a square number further up the school. Yeah, really, really nice patterns in maths. Did you see a 6 and a 3, or a 6 and a 3, or a 6 and a 3? And if that's a 6 and that's a 3, then maybe there's a 6, you know, maybe there's 4 there and 2 there is still a 6, and there's the 3 there. There's so many ways of looking at this. But probably one of the easiest for you as an adult, and certainly for me, is to spot the 3 3s that are going on in here. And this is a really, as I say, really, really important arrangement. So if I now do this, imagine if I dropped these and they landed like this. Look how different that arrangement is compared to how it was before. Your brain is almost certainly less happy with that arrangement or more interested in that arrangement, but it's not viewing it in the way that it did when it was 3 3s. Can you prove in the chat box, is this the same amount, or have I removed some or added some? So how would you prove that? What's one of the ways of proving that? Thinking about what we've just been doing there. So rather than what can you see, think about the image we had before, which was the 3 3s and 3 3s, whichever way you looked at it. Is this the same amount still? Have I removed some or have I added some? Okay, so even without moving it to prove it, move it to prove it. So you could move it to prove it and put it back into that pattern. Okay, I'm going to do that in a moment. But what I want you to notice here is, can you still see 3 3s? There's 3 there, and there's 3 there, and there's 3 there. If there are 3 3s, sorry, I'm rolling here. If there are 3 3s in this amount, it must be the same amount as it was before, even though it looks really different. Yeah? In that amount before, I saw a 6 and a 3, and I know a 6 is made of a 3 and a 3 and another 3. So a 6, well, here's a 4 and a 1, so I need 1 more to make a 6. So there's my 6 there. Remember, we're doing this for you and me here. And there's a 3 there. So now the move it to prove it, like Emma and others said, let's move it back. And there we have like that. Okay, so the move it to prove it is really, really, sorry, wiggly, it's really, really helpful. Because the minute you pull something into a pattern, your brain has to work far less hard. So I want you to think, just tell me in the chat box, have any of you ever had to lay out cups for an event where you've got loads of people coming and there's always someone chatting in your ear? So I used to have to put a lot of cups out for my delegates when I was out and about, a lot more before COVID. And I would put my cups into a line of 5, and I knew it was 5 because it was a 3 and a 2. And then I would put another line of 5, so I knew that was 10. And if I had 30 delegates, I knew I needed either 6 lines of 5 or 3 10s. And when I became aware of 10 frames, I was like, oh my goodness, I've been doing this all my life, but I probably was counting in 5s before. And what I used to do this time was like leave a little gap. So if someone's chuntering in my ear, I've got 2 full 10s and 7, like a 5 and a 2. And I'm like, I still need 3 more cups. And there's no counting, no cognitive load on my behalf because I've got 1,000,001 other things to do. So moving stuff into patterns makes life really, really easy. Okay, let's just try one more. I'm just going to keep it a little bit more simple this time. The tension is building. Okay, so you look there to just mentally this time notice something. And then when you've noticed it one way, notice it another way. So I might say, imagine I might get my finger here, I might say I can see a 4 and a 3. And I can see as well that the 3, if it had one more, would be 2 4s. That helps me see that 3 is 1 less than 4. You can see the 2s pattern here that Numicon uses. I can also see a 4 along the top because it's made of 2 2s, and this is 1 less than a 4. This is a 3. Lots and lots of different things you could. If this was on a 10 frame as well, we'd have 1 gap here and 2 gaps there, and it would leave that 3 bit there, and children may have learned what the 7 looks like. Okay, but hold on to the fact that the 7 is the least important thing for this activity. It's the parts. So now I want you to tell me, have I removed any? Have I added any? So think about the parts you saw. I said I saw a 4 and a 3. You might have seen a 2, a 2, a 2 and a 1. So prove to me in the chat box without moving anything, because obviously you can't touch it, is this the same amount or not? How do you know? And look for the parts within the whole. How do you know, Facebook user, that 1 is missing? What do you notice about what is there compared to what was there? So what's your reasoning? Okay, so some people are giving me an answer. I want your reasons. I want, what can you see now compared to what could you see before? Okay, so keep it even more simple than I'm seeing. So the idea before was I knew I had a 4 and a 3. Well, now I've got a 4 and a 2. Before I had a 2, a 2, a 2 and a 1. And now I've got a 2, a 2 and a 2. So there's definitely 1 missing. It doesn't matter if I don't know what that total was. And if I put it back into its pattern, move it to prove it, you can see there that there's 3 2s there, or a 4 and a 2, and then the 1 that's in my hand, because I removed it, is there. So this is really, really important. And what I want you to hold on to, that I just want to focus on in this session here, is, I don't even know how to say this without sounding really frustrated. There are whole sections in schemes, and you can put a name on the scheme, that are on counting. And everything we've just done there doesn't involve counting. And if I counted these 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, I'm not going to see the 4 and the 3. I'm not going to see the 3 2s and a 1, because when you count 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, there was only 1 2 there, and it was there. And if I count it the other way, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, that one that was the 5 has just become the 2. And that's before we even get started on the fact that subitizing, which is what we're doing here, and seeing amounts, is a natural skill you're born with. And counting is something human beings have created. I know we all know that, but I think sometimes this gets forgotten. And subitizing will actually make sense of counting. So just let me show you that briefly before I show you something else. The idea here with 4, you said there's a 2 and a 2 in 4. If you count 4, 1 2 3 4, there's not 2 2s, there's only 1 2. It's really confusing. if you say 1, 1, 1, 1, because that's what we can see, and another 1, you've called all of them 1s. But if you count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you've only used 1 once. So you need to start thinking along the lines of the human invention that is counting. And also the final bit here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 5. That was 1, that was 2, that was 3, that was 4, that was 5. But now I've got to call all of it 5. So that one's 5, that one's 5, that one's 5, and that one's 5. But they're not, they're 1s. This doesn't make sense, which is why so many children struggle with it. If you can subitize, there's 1. Now we've got 2. Now we've got 3. Now we've got 4. And within that 4, we've still got 2 2s. We've got 4 1s. We've got a 3 and a 1. And it doesn't matter which counter I move first. There's 1 counter. Now there's 2 counters. Now there's 3 counters. Now there's 4 counters. That, of course, sounds like counting because it basically is. But what I'm using is my subitizing. I'm thinking there. The total is 2. Now the total is 3. What can I see within the 3? A 2 and a 1, and a 1 and a 1 and a 1. And now the total is 4, and I can still see my 2 2s and so forth. So my massive worry that I see in, and I'm going to talk about the English National Curriculum because that's what most of you are using, is nowhere in year 1 and year 2 does it say to teach children to use counting to calculate. Did you see there that we were calculating, got 2 2s in the 4? So therefore 2 plus 2 equals 4. And if you've got 4 and you subtract 2, you're left with 2. It's subitizing that's going to give children that fluency. If you have your, mine aren't very good, but if you have your 10 frame, if I just quickly do this before I show you the thing I really want to show you. So can you see there? Oh, it's really wiggly, isn't it? So children are, when they're taught, just like adults, to recognize that as 6 instantly, and they can see there's 3 2s in the 6 and 2 3s in the 6 and a 4 and a 2 in the 6. And also with the 10 frame, you've got this 4 that isn't here yet. So therefore, what do I need to add to 6 to equal 10? All the way, 6 to equal 10. I need 4 more because I can see that and subitize it. If I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not giving you that whole number image and the parts of the whole that so many schemes talk about. But you can see here that you can clearly see the parts of the whole. So one really important message, and if you do more work with me, I won't go nearly as fast as this. I've got a challenge coming up, so watch out for that subitizing. But never ever count on a 10 frame, because a 10 frame isn't meant to be there to count. It's meant to be there so you recognize the image of the number. So if I do this, can you see that's not the same number, because this time there's only 2 spaces left over, and this is a number with a 4 and a 4 in it. This is a number that is 2 fewer than 10. You've got to look at the whole thing and then look at the parts from the whole. Counting isn't going to help you do that. Okay, hopefully some of you literally could, so somebody's just asked, great question. Do they not need to start with counting, otherwise will they know it's 2 or 3? That is such a good question, and that's exactly where we start with the super subitizing challenge, so watch out for that. So I'm just going to quickly model that for you. Right, from babies, children know that amount is more than this amount. If you've had children of your own, you'll know they reach for the food that's the most if they've got 2 piles of food in front of them. They know the oneness of 1 and the two-ness of 2, they just don't know the names yet. So they understand, and humans didn't used to use, this is the best way to think about it, humans didn't used to use number names for thousands of years because we didn't have a number system, and yet they could still work out how many of things there were because you've got a sense of using imagery. So I'll link it to that. So what we do is we tell them what this is, just like you would tell them when you hold an apple and you say apple, and you hold a banana and you say banana. So this is 2 and this is 1. Okay, so whenever they see anything, I haven't got anything easily to hand. Let me just grab something. So, as I say, if you're at the beginning of your journey, you have to trust me here, but it'll make such a difference to your life. But here I've got my washers on magnets. So it's still very similar, but we've got 1 here and we've got 2 here. And in that 2, there's a 1 and a 1, and you can move it to prove it. So we do loads and loads of work on this. We also teach them what that's called, because they know that that and that are different. And when they've got that, that's different again. And they learn to look at the one and the one and the one. And by labeling it ourselves, that's a bit of subtraction, they learn to label the number names. But the really important part about your question is what we've got called counting for ordinality, which is where you do lots of songs and rhymes with your children. So you give them the number names of your number system, whatever their first language is. So they've heard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because they're doing all these songs and rhymes with you. And when you then show them this thing, which they already knew what it was, but this amount's called 1, this amount's called 2, and in 2 there's a 1 and a 1, they take to it so quickly. So I'm sure that lots of Impact members will comment about that in the chat box. But come on a journey with me about that, because it's so unbelievably exciting. One more thing I get you to think about, whoever said that as well. You will be reading a book with a 2 or 3-year-old who can't count yet, and they will say things like, look, mummy, 2 pigs, or they'll hold up fingers. They are naturally showing us their number sense all day, every day. And counting, as I say, calling that 1 and that 2 and that 3, and then saying how many. If you say 3, they think it's the last one you said. It's not all of them. Why would it be? Because that was called 1 and that was called 2 and that was called 3. It's hard when you first start on this journey because we've never ever been asked to think like this, but actually you subitize all day, every day. Okay, so lots and lots of things going on. I'm conscious of time. So what I want to show you is what set off me wanting to talk about this. So this was one of the Impact members is delivering year 1, White Rose. I'd say she's a user, not a follower, because the fact she asked the question. But I just want to show this to you. Now that's one of them. Let me see, make sure I get the right one. Right, okay, so if we had more time, I'd do more of this, but I just want to make sure you have a look here. So this is actually a great example on here. Remember I said be really clear on my messaging. There's far more I need to tell you, but what we need to focus on is what is the skill this activity is aiming to secure. That's what we call our destination. And then we say, is this activity doing this in the best possible way? Is it making the connections our children need? Is it meaningful and relevant? Is it going to be something our children can pick up and use in their play, in their snack time, all of these things? So this activity over here, this is not the one she asked me about. She asked me about this one. But the idea about how many times do I clap, that is a great use of counting and not subitizing. The idea of saying a number as you clap is a different skill than saying, for example, clap 5 times, because then we have to do the 5 claps, which is slightly different than clapping along. But that's a great example of using counting, because when anything is linear, when anything is moving, when anything is going past us, counting is the best way to find out how many. So this activity, in its essence, as far as I'm concerned, I think what I would be thinking is, can we do this as part of a song or a rhyme? Because it would make it more interesting. But in essence, this activity that's being suggested here is totally fine, because I understand that counting in this way is going to give them number names. The idea about 5 claps, it is most appropriate to use counting when something, as I say, is being heard or is moving on. But I would be thinking, oh my goodness, there's so many songs and rhymes I could be using to do this. So I would probably write that on my planning and enhance that. This is what the member asked. And I want you to notice here what we did earlier, that it says here, the apples show 2 numbers. Now, I find this as well unhelpful. I don't think they do strictly show numbers, but I think it would be more helpful to children to say 2 amounts, because the numbers children are often thinking about digits, but that isn't the main thing here. But we've got a 3 and a 3 and a 3, and a 3 and a 3 and a 3, and a 6 and a 3. There's so much to notice here. And the question from Mo is, or the statement from Mo is, the numbers are the same. And Tiny says the numbers are not the same. Who do you agree with? Why? Now, this is in a section that says count objects. So there is it's basically saying, isn't it, that the way to find out how many are there is to count them. If you count them, one, you will need to have all of your counting skills in place, which is a much higher level skill. By year 1, most children should have that in place. it'd be very easy to go wrong here, but why would you count them? When you can see that there are 3 3s here and there are 3 3s in here, that is proof that there's the same amount. Also, you could, what the girl in the group suggested, my member suggested, is you could, if you wanted to, put counters on each of these, and then you could move it to prove it. But there's so much going on in here that is to do with subitizing and part whole that it is really rich with wonderful ways of looking here. And none of those ways are counting going to support. It doesn't make sense why this is asking children to count. This does, this doesn't. But you're only going to know that if your subject knowledge is strong and you understand why we're doing what we're doing. So subitizing is the foundation for counting. Subitizing is the foundation for all addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Comparison of numbers, part whole, all of those things. That is not the message you're going to get in this scheme. So be really, really careful. Here, look, spiders. High cognitive load, be careful, because children are going to be more interested in the legs. When you're thinking about how many of something, use something that isn't that interesting to look at. Stones and leaves are much, much better, particularly stones. But here, the way that they are arranged, you could notice the 2 and the 2 and the 1. But if these were put into a 5 frame, the fact that they filled the 5 would tell children instantly there's 5. There's no need to count them. Same with the stones and the leaves. Lots of activities where you would get a load of stones. And for example, here, you could say, look, there's 2 stones and 2 stones, so there's 4 stones. You put them on your 5 frame, and you've got your 2 2s there. You've got 1 missing, so it's 1 less than 5. There's so much good stuff we can do. Really, really important. But I just wanted to look before we go here. This is exactly the same unit. And this, for me, if I go to the right place, these activities for me are below the level of where I would expect year ones to be. I think the pitch here is very, very low. Certainly from what we've seen our nursery and reception children doing an impact with my impact members. I don't really understand why this is the way it is. And also it's not place value because it actually doesn't go beyond 10. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time. But then the very same unit has this. So we've got buttons, and because of the way they're laid out, you're pretty much going to have to count them. Whereas if these were put in a 10 frame, which White Rose do use 10 frames, children would see instantly how many there were, not only by looking at the pattern of the number, but also by seeing it in relation to 10, which is so, so helpful. So here, you can see as an adult there are 6. If that was in a 10 frame where there was 5 and 1 more, that 6 pattern is incredibly important, that 6 is 1 more than 5. Or if they were arranged in the 2s pattern, that would be really, really helpful. I don't understand why they're laid out like this. This writing here, write less or greater to compare these numbers. So we've suddenly gone from children who are apparently needing to do this sort of thing at a very low level to suddenly asking children, the same children, in a matter of weeks, to be looking at something like this. 3 is something than 9, all written down, not done practically. We should have 3 in a 10 frame. We should have 9 in a 10 frame. Once we got those images, that's going to be really obvious which is less and which is more. And you could even talk about how many less. What would you need to add to 3 to equal 9 and so forth. So there's an awful lot here that when you have got good subject knowledge, you can look and think, I can make this much better. I can make this much more meaningful to my children, rather than literally plodding through the steps as it is given in the scheme. So I hope that makes sense. If you are new to me, this is a lot to take on board. That's why I started off with the playing. But what we will do, for example, when we do the Super Subitizing Challenge, which is next month, just keep an eye on the group, keep an eye on your email, and I'll let you know about this. But lots of people started off their work with me doing Super Subitizing Challenge, 1 to 10 Challenge, Sunflower Challenge. Come and go on this journey with me slowly, with all of us slowly, and really start to understand that so many activities are still in most schemes and approaches saying teach them to count, to calculate basically, and that ends up with children in Key Stage 2. So in England, that is your 7 to 11-year-olds who instead of using place value when they do 7 add 4 and thinking, well, I'd add the 3, so part whole, add the 3 out of the 4 to the 7 to equal a finished 10. So that would be, let me just do this quickly. What did I say? 7 add 4. Okay, let's use the 2's pattern here. So 7 add 4. You can see there isn't space to put 4 on here, so we can add 3 of the 4 to finish the 10. And then we've got 1, it doesn't matter where that is, I'll move it up there just because it kind of suits me better, but we've got 1 on here, so we've got 1 finished 10 frame and 1 of the next 10 frame, which is why 11 is written like this: 1 finished 10 frame and 1 finished group of 10 and 1 of the next 10. So that's why 11's like that. So if you're a Key Stage 2 child and you've got a column method with 7 plus 4, and you think, okay, so 7 plus 3 of the 4 gives me a full 10, that's why I carry it, and then I've got 1 of the next 10, that's why it sits in the ones, or the what we used to call the units column. Our children don't do that. In Key Stage 2, they're there going 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, just like we did, or 7, and bouncing their heads along. And nowhere in the curriculum does it say to teach them to count, to calculate. And everywhere in the curriculum from 7 onwards says, teach them, make sure they use their number bonds, make sure they use those part whole and their place value. So that's why I'm showing you what I'm showing you tonight. Make sure you access the things that I am giving you. My YouTube channel is full of free training. Make sure you access them and start to question what's in the scheme and zhuzh it up where it's good and you can make it better, and absolutely question why on earth we are not using images of 10 frames more and the part whole, which will lead your children to be able to calculate fluently, use number bonds, use number facts, and end up adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, doubling, odds, evens, you name it. But if you don't have the right subject knowledge, you are just going to look at that scheme and think, this scheme is going to teach the maths for me. It's not. And please don't use those awful videos with that woman talking on it. Why on earth would anyone want to play a video to their class of someone else teaching? I'll leave it there. So let's have a look. Yeah, so here, so Kathy's saying, when I taught year 3, I couldn't understand why it took them so long to grasp column addition. Well, we know ourselves as well, don't we, Kathy, that I could do column addition in my sleep because I did it for thousands of hours at school, but I had no idea why I was doing what I was doing. We've got children who, when they're trying to add 2-digit numbers mentally or 3-digit numbers, they can't manipulate the numbers. They're trying to do column methods in their head, which is what a lot of adults try and do as well. Right, that one, Sarah, I'm so glad you were there for that. That makes such a difference. Can I just show you a little bit more because we love this? Right, look at this, Sarah, and anybody else. You know, people say teen numbers are hard to learn. They're not. As long as, look, it's like, what do you see and how do you see it? Sorry about the wobbling. 1 finished 10 and not 4 more, but 4 of the next 10. So then we write it down. 1 finished 10 and 4 of the next 10. That's why 14's written like that. In every language in the world, it looks like this, and it's just its name that is different in each of the languages. Massive wow bomb. Okay, let's have a look. Yeah, so Sarah, again, I think you're fairly new to me. Apologies if you're not, but it's so lovely to have you on the call. But the idea that, yeah, be really aware that schemes, even the NCETM Mastery is talking about counting and cardinality. Cardinality is the how much, the how manyness of a number. To find out how much something is, just like we've been doing here, you can subitize it's 2, or you can count 1, 2. Okay, and that's the way of finding out cardinality. Why it's called counting and cardinality, I don't know, because counting is a form of cardinality. So again, it's all down to our subject knowledge. Let's have a look. Anybody got any questions, or I just bombarded you with too much information here? So thank you, Sarah. That's so fascinating. Thanks, all, and Karen. Makes much more sense. Do need to dig deeper and learn more. Yeah, do. But just don't be, everyone, a follower. Don't be the person who says, there's only 7 steps and I've got 10 weeks. How do I do this? There's so many brilliant ways of teaching your children maths that they will pick up and use in their snack time. They will pick up and use when they're using their loose parts. They will pick up and use when you're doing your calendar, because we're doing time at the moment in the snack size learning. And it's about me helping you think differently. It's about you wanting to do that and not being scared. Anybody who is controlling you from the outside because they believe that the scheme is the right thing, let them. Have that scheme in there. It's fine. I just want you to be a user and not a follower. Does that make sense, everyone? Even if you've just moved like this far and you've thought, actually, that makes sense. We can be subversive. And when it starts to work, which it will, that's when we can start telling people what we're doing differently. So I hope, okay, so this person, how do I check where children's understanding of subitizing is when they're new to you? What a great question. Children will show you their knowledge of number sense and subitizing without using number names when they are younger, because of course they don't know how to label the amounts. So what they will do is they will be drawn to the greater amount. That shows they can see there's a larger amount. They will sometimes, when you ask them something, show you how many using their fingers. They can match up. Sorry, I've got a real tickle. If you've got 3 things, children can often match the 3 things you've got. So this could be children with special needs. This could be children where you haven't got a shared language. But what we've got to stop doing is thinking a child only understands a number when they say the number name. Because, as I say, our ancestors didn't have number digits and number names and worked perfectly well within everyday life with what we would call amounts and numbers, but they just didn't have names for them. So the idea that you can compare and check things and look for parts within the whole without those labels is where we need to start with our thinking. It's a brilliant journey to go on. It really, really is. Yeah, so teach children the concept of what number is, but really, as I say, you know, the same message, I'm going to pop off in a minute, but the same message is just make sure it's you that understands the stuff. And then you will have so many brilliant ideas. You will find yourself thinking, right, for example, White Rose or Maths No Problem is saying, teach them to add 2 single-digit numbers in this way, or teach them about doubles in this way. And you'll be like, I've got a much better way of doing it. You're still doing what the scheme is telling you to do, but you are using your understanding to enhance that learning massively, because a lot of what's in the schemes isn't very exciting, and in some cases it's not even mathematically correct. So know your stuff and then you'll spot it. Yeah, so Wendy says we subitize naturally. You are an expert now, Wendy. But yeah, you subitize. Next time you go down to the kitchen and there's just some stuff sprinkled on the side, or you need a certain amount of cups, you will not go 1, 2, 3, 4 cups. If you just stand back a bit, you'll be like, oh, there's 2 cups and 2 cups. That's 4 cups. That's your subitizing at work. It's so, so useful. So concept image, Sarah, instead of counting. Yeah, because there'll just be about 4 of us left on this call, won't there? Can you see, Sarah, that, and again, there's lots of steps leading up to this, but knowing that that is 8, and not only knowing that it's 8 because there's 2 missing, and knowing that 8's got a 4 and a 4 in it that way, and a 4 and a 4 in it that way, and that it's 6 and 2 and so forth, and you could take it off the 10 frame and do move it to prove it and lots of wonderful things. That compared to going like this, excuse me a minute. So I always, if you haven't worked with me before, I always got my little boards on the go. Right, give me a second. I just had one fall off. So first of all, we could say, is this 8? And how do we know? And I'm thinking, well, I saw a 4 and a 4. So as an adult, I'm looking for a 4 and a 4. Can you see how much easier that is than going, oh, hang on a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You never, even as an adult, you're not quite sure which ones you've counted. And if someone interrupts you, you get mixed up. When I look at the horses outside the field of my office, or the sheep along the lane now, and once you start this, you can't stop. If there's a small cluster of sheep, I'll be like, how many are there, using my subitizing? So I'm like, well, I can see a 4 and I can see a 2, and I know that's 6, and there's 1 more, that's 7. Much quicker and easier than trying to count them like this. And also you understand there's a 4 and a 2 and a 1 in a 7. All right, so anybody else? I think let's see. So any cues? Is this live recorded, can be viewed again? Yes, it can. And keep your Haylock book handy. Absolutely. Let's finish on that. Who said that? Kathy. Well done, Kathy. So lots I can tell you, but I did not used to have good math subject knowledge, because where would I have got it from? I wasn't taught it at university when I was training to be a teacher, very sadly. Wasn't encouraged to learn it when I was teaching. So all of the people who work with me, doesn't matter what edition it is, get hold of a copy of Haylock. It won't teach you everything, and he doesn't even mention subitizing, but it will teach you what addition and subtraction, multiplication, division, shape, measures, and everything is. And you will never, ever be as you were. You will have accurate subject knowledge, and then you can have conversations with anybody who happens to come into your classroom. And it isn't from me, and it isn't from you, it's from Derek. So Derek Haylock, Maths Explained for Primary Teachers, widely available online. Get yourself a copy. All right, well, I hope that has helped some people. And just to conclude, it is not easy. I do not underestimate how stressful your job is, because I've been there, and my job when I wasn't there has been supporting people like all of you, and anyone who works with me will know that. But when you do what is right for the children, it's because you change yourself in order to do what's right for the children, and everybody benefits. There's almost been conversations in the group today that have suggested that if you do what's right for the children, somehow it'll be worse for you. That doesn't ever happen. And can you do this even when you've got dragons breathing down your neck about whichever scheme it is, and we have to do it like this? They're scared. They don't know what they don't know yet. And we all know how that feels. It's horrible. So don't go and have a conversation. And nothing I've said today has suggested that anybody goes walking into the head's office and says, we need training on this, it's a load of rubbish. What you do is you invest in yourself. You invest in what's best for you and the children. And then when it starts to make a difference, people start to notice. And this has happened over and over again in Impact. Sometimes taken a year, sometimes taken longer, but oh boy, are we making a difference. All right. Have a great evening, everyone. Yeah, you were counting someone when Susanna, who's now in Norway, was in Ireland. She was, yeah, people always talk about counting when a lot of the time they don't mean it. They mean they were subitizing. All right. Hope that's been helpful. And, you know, all the questions you've got, just ask them below. And myself and my lovely Impact members will come on and help you. You know, you don't have to pay us any money. We are here to get you on the right track and do it all together, so you're never alone. Take care, everyone. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.